all these courts around the country just dishing it out. And when you first get sentenced to this, you don't realise you're on a life sentence through the back door. You think you're in prison like any other normal prisoner.
He was 18 when he committed the crime. He's now 35 and he's still paying for this crime.
Yeah. I think in 2010, when he didn't get his parole in 2010, he made a noose and he put it around his neck and he was going to kill himself. And the only thing that stopped him in his last thoughts was me.
Correct me if I'm wrong, 9,000 on IPP for low-level crimes?
Yeah.
It's just whoever's above who's made this IPP thing is just fucked up.
The Central Club.
I'm going to go straight in with this one. Today's guest is the mother of Shaun Lloyd. Shaun Lloyd is an IPP prisoner. She's also a campaigner for change within the IPP system. I have Shirley Debono with me today. How are you, Shirley?
I'm okay, good, thanks.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I just want to say a funny story before we get in to this. I've always known of you, always heard about you. I've never met you before. It's a pleasure. But I remember being in a prison myself whilst I was going through my addiction. And I remember a campaign going on. Well, I don't know if it was a campaign, so to speak, but there was banners. There was shouting outside Cardiff prison on one of my sentences.
That was me.
That was you. You're like the superhero in the IPP, against IPP. You know that, don't you?
No, I don't. I just do what I got to do to try and get justice. I know a lot of prisoners know of me. I'm in touch with a lot of prisoners in most individual prisons. So word gets about that there is campaigns going on out here, different campaign groups and stuff like that. But I am well known through the establishment as well, through the work that I've done for them.
Yeah, well, there's some people out there I can imagine who've got no family, have they?
No. And the ones that got no family, they're more inclined to be the ones that's trapped in the system because they got nobody outside looking out for them, help them out, maybe send them some money sometimes so they can buy a jar of coffee or, some biscuits, something like a little bit of pleasure, and they got nothing in prison. They can't make phone calls out because there's nobody to call. And these are a group of prisoners that got no one on the outside that mental health issues are more likely to kick in with them than somebody that I've got someone on the outside. So it's a tragedy.
Yeah. I want to kind of jump straight in really with about Shaun, your son, who's, it's a shame really because you just look at these, straight from the get-go when you look at IPP, it's always that word that comes up. It is barbaric, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I want to know how he's got in this situation in the first place. And what kind of boy was Shaun growing up?
He was bubbly, he was funny, he was boisterous, he could be cheeky, but he was a good kid, He was the sort, if you asked him to go down a shop for you, he was gone. If you asked him to do anything for you, he'd do it. If he'd even tidy up, mop the floor and stuff like that. He was good with the neighbours, the elderly neighbours. He'd help them with their shopping and things like that. He was very intelligent in school, especially with maths. They changed the curriculum in school, so you had to learn the Welsh language. So Shaun started misbehaving when he had to sit in these lessons learning the Welsh language. He didn't like it. And I went to the school and I asked the teacher, rather than him running out of school, mitching sort of thing, because he don't like these Welsh classes, can you not put him in a library with a book to read for half an hour? They didn't. And Shaun was in the school rugby team. He was a good rugby player. And as a punishment, if he didn't go to his Welsh class, they stopped him training rugby. So he wouldn't be able to do any training or play in any rugby matches. So he's seen that as like a punishment, severe punishment. And I did as well. I thought there's other ways and means of chastising him and punishing him other than taking the sport away from him, because all kids need sport. And I think that was the downhill spiral for Shaun. He started mitching school a lot, hanging around with the wrong crowd. He was actually being trained to be a boxer as well by Pat Thomas, who had won
Yeah, I know Pat.
the Lonsdale belt at one point. And Pat Thomas used to train him to box. He actually wanted to train Shaun for the Commonwealth Games. But Shaun started hanging around with the wrong crowds because the school wouldn't have him back in. There was times when I went up to the school and I cried and I begged him, please take Shaun back into school. He's running the streets, you know. You can't control him. He's 14 years of age by now. He's a big boy. He's fit. He's strong, you know. And the school failed. The school failed him, definitely. And that then was Shaun started getting into trouble with this gang that he was hanging around with. If you left your bike outside the shop, Shaun would take it, or they would take it. If there was a laptop in the back of a car, they smash the window and they take the laptop. And Shaun seemed to be the only one out of this gang that was caught every time. So Shaun ended up with a record arm's length for petty crime. And then it came to a point when he was 15 and the police came to my house to take clothes belonging to Shaun. The night before, two students, I think they were, had got beaten up badly outside of a park. And Shaun was actually in the park that day, or early evening, with his friends. So they witnessed that attack take place by two older men, you know, in maybe 20 years of age. And they witnessed that, but they were nothing to do with it. But the next day, Shaun was outside the shop in a Splot area, and he seen one of the victims. And stupidly, Shaun says, yo, have you got a wallet for me? He was childish. That's what he said. So the victim then used his phone and called the police to say that one of the perpetrators was outside this shop. And they arrested Shaun for that. He was locked up all weekend from the Thursday going into the weekend. And he's like, Mum, I didn't do it. I never done it. I never done it. But he would not say who the two people was that did it. He knew them. They were older than him. They were two nasty people that you wouldn't tell on anyway. Your life would be made hell. But Shaun was saying to me he didn't do it, but he would never tell me who did it either. When it came to the court case, let me step back a bit. While he was at the police station, we're running out of time now as well because they need to charge him within the hours. So he had to pick out photographs of young boys, 15 years of age, that looked like him, so as they could be submitted to the victims. Can you point him out? At the time, Shaun had a black eye when he'd been mucking about with all his mates. It was just starting to fade. So he was rushed by the police to pick his pictures out because they kept coming into the room. Can you hurry up? Can you hurry up? Can you hurry up? They were running down to like 5 minutes to charge him, or they wouldn't be able to charge him. And they charged him anyway. Once these pictures were picked out, once his picture was picked out, he stood out like a sore thumb in the pictures. And he was charged. He got sentenced to 4 years imprisonment to a youth offending institute at the age of 15. That was reduced to 3 years on an appeal. And so he got out in 18 months. When he got out, he never ever told me who did that. He was, he'd done time for someone else, really. But when he got out, he was with the same people again, hanging around. And they all got drunk one night. This was only 2 weeks into him being out. He was out on licence. And they'd done a street robbery, stole the mobile phone off the victims. And he ended up straight back in custody. So that was in November. And he's been inside then. He got sentenced in January. I think January the 6th. He got sentenced to the IPP sentence with a 2.5-year prison sentence with the IPP added, bit mumble jumble there. But he got sentenced to the IPP because he had supposedly committed a violent offence before. But I campaigned so hard for Shaun because I know he never done that. And the two people that done it know they done it. And, and one of them is actually serving an IPP sentence. And whilst out a few years ago, I think it was 2018, the other IPP that comes from Cardiff did say to Shaun, why don't you tell him, Shaun, it was me that done it. There's no need for you to be on an IPP sentence. You didn't do it. I done it. So that's another road I'm pursuing at the moment now. If this IPP is going to come out and tell the truth and have a meeting with the solicitor. Because if we can get that taken off of Shaun, because it's new evidence, that it means they'd have to take the IPP off him on appeal as well then.
Well, yeah, they've given that IPP on the basis he's done that one already.
Yeah, and he never turned in. And that's why I feel so sorry for Shaun, because he's never really harmed no one in his life. And he's on this IPP sentence for a crime that he never committed, and the IPP had it because he'd done a street robbery with no violence, of stealing a mobile phone under the influence of drink. And when he got locked up that time, and I'd gone to the police station the next day, he didn't even know why he got arrested because he was so drunk with his friends.
Yeah. The fact that
his friend, when they both went to court, Shaun got sentenced to like the 2.5-year tariff with the IPP licence added, and his friend who done the crime with him had 18 months sentence and out in 9 months.
So that's what Shaun would have had if it weren't for the previous one.
Yeah.
The fact we're even talking about an IPP sentence for a phone robbery is ridiculous anyway.
Yeah, because they're only supposed to give an IPP sentence out if it was the same or worse crime as the initial offence. The first offence. It's got to be an act of violence. There was no act of violence.
Before we dive into it a bit more, just maybe I should have done it at the beginning. Can you explain what IPP is for the people?
Right, the Indeterminate Sentence for the Protection of the Public, known as IPP, was brought out in 2005 on the back of there was general elections going on, and the Labour Party wanted to get in government, and they wanted to be seen tough on crime. And we all remember, what happened to little Sarah Payne, the little girl that was murdered by a paedophile that had not long been released from prison. So there was a massive campaign to keep paedophiles, perpetrators of sexual violence and people like that in prison for a long time. So that's when the Blair government, when it came in, they brought out this IPP sentence that would keep people like him inside for a very long time. He'd been inside, come out, murdered Sarah Payne, and he should never have got out in the first place. He was dangerous. So that's how that sentence came about. But it wasn't implemented properly. Yeah. So there wasn't, judges were dishing it out to people like Shaun, like sweets, like candy. If you went in front of him for stealing a bike, as one boy did, and you got your IPP. And they ended up, I think, with almost 9,000 in prison. And in 2008, they changed legislation because, the lowest tariff was 28 days. Some guy got sentenced to 28 days in prison. He had an argument with his wife, blah, blah, blah. He had 28 days in prison, and they kept him in for 11 years. So that was the lowest ever tariff. And they realised something was wrong. So in 2008, they changed legislation so you would not get an IPP if your sentence was 2 years or under.
Okay.
Yeah, so that they changed that bit of it. And then in 2012, they abolished it altogether because they realised it was wrong. It wasn't working.
Do you think IPP is effective? I know we say it's barbaric, they've abolished it and stuff, but did you think it was effective in certain ways for certain prisoners?
It would have been effective if it was dished out to the people it was meant for.
Yeah, they were like bang up happy with it, weren't they, at the time? They're just throwing them out.
They were on a hype. They were throwing them out, Cardiff Crown Court were throwing so many out every month, and all these courts around the country just dishing it out. And you know, when you first get sentenced to this, you don't realise you're on a life sentence through the back door. You think you're in prison like any other normal prisoner. You know, you're going to do your time, you're going to get out. And then in Shaun's case, he got to his 2.5 years. He had a parole. They told him, no, you're staying inside. And then I thought, right, perhaps they're going to make you do a bit longer, Shaun, like the 5 years. You know, just knuckle down. This is what the problem is. They're going to make you do the 5 years. But 5 years came his next parole and he still didn't get out.
How was he when that 2.5 years, was he expecting to come out after those 2.5?
Yeah, we all were. Even I didn't know what the IPP sentence was then.
It came into effect in your head as well.
I thought, right, hang on, I gotta investigate this. I gotta research it. I didn't know how to use a mobile phone properly because I never had a phone, you know, and didn't know how to use a computer. I was illiterate in that sense. And then it took me about 3 months to learn all these words I've never heard before, like tariff. I never heard of tariff. What's a tariff? You know, and then I learned after about 3 months that my son was on a life sentence through the back door. And I had to do something. So I started like writing to ministers, writing to the Prison Reform Trust. I Googled, organisations, and they'd come up. The Howard League would come up, and I started writing to these people. But there wasn't no help out there. There was no help out there at all from any of these organisations.
He was 18 when he committed the crime. He's now 35, and he's still paying for this crime.
Yeah.
He has been released, during that, but I think the damage has already been done, and I think that's probably what it is.
I think in 2010, when he didn't get his parole in 2010, he made a noose and he put it around his neck and he was going to kill himself. And the only thing that stopped him in his last thoughts was me, how he would devastate me. And it was a split second between life and death at that point. I mean, I could have buried him years ago if he'd gone through with it. But and that broke me then. That broke me to think that my son's headspace wants to kill himself. But I wasn't broken until he came out. When he came out of prison in 2014, that's the first time he told me about that, though. I didn't know that he was going to hang himself until 2014. And when he told me, that's when it broke me. I thought, oh my God, Shaun, you went through all that in prison. You were going to kill yourself and stuff like that. And I didn't know he was addicted to drugs either whilst he was in prison until he came out in 2014. When he came out, he couldn't get the drug he was looking for, Subutex, and
when he came out of prison,
and he explained to me.
Picked a habit.
He explained to me why he became addicted to drugs, and this was the first time I heard he was going to kill himself. He was going to kill himself, and he confided with another prisoner, older prisoner, how he felt, how he was feeling, and he's told. Even the other prisoner said, "Do not tell no staff because you'll end up having to do psychology and all this, and you got to work towards your next parole and get out, and you won't get out if you start complaining about depression." So he said, the one thing that'll make you feel better, Shaun, is take this. And he gave him a Subutex. He said, that'll make your days shorter and it'll take your depression away. You'll feel better about yourself and you can focus on progressing to get out on your next parole. So that's how Shaun became addicted to drugs, prescription drugs, in the prison, and I had no idea that he was still addicted when he came out. And he's looking to get these on a black market, which he couldn't get all the time. And this is like 2 years down the line. And he took heroin. And he confided in me that he took heroin. And I thought, Shaun, I can't have you on heroin. You've just told me about the drug and what have you. We could have sorted that out. I would have took you to the doctors. But heroin is a no-no. You will never get off it. And we ended up confiding in the probation service. So their answer to that was to recall him back to prison.
You are kidding me.
Yeah, they took him back to prison for that. He's had like a couple of missed appointments for probation. I thought by us going to probation and confiding
They'd
in them,
help you, yeah.
that Shaun's got this problem that we never knew about. And I thought they put him, help.
Rehab,
put him
drug
to
service.
rehab, anyway, bar prison. But he went to prison. So that's what they do. That's what they did. So that was like his first recall 2 years after being released. He was released in 2014 and recalled in 2016. When he went into prison, that's when they put him on the methadone. The methadone. And the methadone is a downhill spiral. I am going to say it, the Duvedal drug clinic in Cardiff, I've looked it up. It's run by private companies. G4S got a massive stake in it. And I've been trying to get it out there that this Duvedal, it needs investigating. That's another story, but it needs to be under investigation. Because Shaun came out on a what's called methadone script. After doing a 12-month in prison, he came out on a methadone script, and I think it was about 40 mils. And then within months, it's gone up and up and up and up and up. It's have your meth, go to the chemist, get your rest.
I was in Debono for 10 years.
Yeah.
And my father was the exact same. He hated the place.
Yeah. It's every mil of methadone you take is making money.
Of course.
For these private companies. They got no intentions of weaning anybody down off these drugs because it's making money. So as long as my son was into that Duvedal drug clinic, he was never going to get weaned down. And before long, he's up to 90 mils and stuff like that. And then the 90 mils is not holding him. And that's when he lapses. And when he lapses, he's in a lot of trouble with probation. So 2 years down the line again, the same thing happens again. And he's recalled again. Late appointments.
So he's, sorry, Shirley, you haven't committed any more crimes. It's now down to his addiction. He's getting recalled.
He's never been recalled for a crime, but Shaun have shoplifted once or twice.
His habit.
Because of his habits, he's not like a big shoplifter. He just took things on occasion that he shouldn't have, and he knows it's wrong. But he's never been recalled for that, and they've never seen that as a threat. Probation, the shoplifting, but they recall him when he wants help for the drug addiction.
That don't make sense to me.
No, it don't make sense. He needs proper. They're not managing him in the community properly. They're not managing him, not just him. Thousands others. So that was another recall for that again. Yeah.
It's not just these IPP prisoners, though, is it, that are not being managed well? This is across the board with anyone with drug problems.
Across the board.
It's just a shame that these IPPs, it's just one less off the streets in there.
Yeah, and maybe. Because they're indeterminate, they don't know how long they're going to be inside. Because that time, when he got recalled we actually went to the doctors about his addiction. The doctor gave us a letter to take to the University Hospital of Wales, where he's seen a psychologist up there and a doctor, who then sent us to some other drug clinic in town, round by St Andrew's Crescent somewhere. There's a drug clinic there. Yeah. I can't remember the name of it.
How long ago?
This was 2016.
I worked there now. It was Tithe. I didn't work there then. It was called Tithe then.
Was it?
I work for Cavdas now. New service, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not just being biased. I think there is a conversation happening and there is more help out there, but it was Tithe then. I had nothing to do with them. Yeah, go on.
But anyway, we went there and, we sat down, we chatted with them for 20 minutes, no more than half an hour about the problem. And then they diverted us back to Duvedal.
Because that's where the methadone is.
And when we went back to the Duvedal then to talk to the doctor, he was recalled. So we've gone everywhere asking for help, ended back at the Duvedal, and then he's back in prison.
So he was recalled because of the doctor. The doctor has made that decision.
The doctor is what it
They
is,
speak to probation and I know that.
they work together. Duvidal and the probation work together. And once you're seen as going looking somewhere else for help, that's the end of you. So that was the 2016, he was recalled. That's what happened then. 2018, he was recalled again for seeking help.
Can I say something? You know that time when he came out in 2014? Now, you have waited 9 years for your son to come out.
Yeah. I cries when I got to think of this part. He came out, right? And he was sat on a sofa. And I knew Shaun as the boisterous little boy growing up. He was, he was just a normal teenager, apart from hanging around with the wrong crowd. He was a normal teenager. And I sat with open plan in the house. So I sat at the dining table at this end and he sat on a sofa and he was staring into space. And I realised at that point, they fucked my boy's head up. They fucked his head up. And I knew they had did that. And it broke me.
Could you, that's terrible, but could you enjoy that he was out? Was you like celebrating it, or in the back of your mind, are you still thinking he can get recalled any moment? Like, was you, because you've campaigned for however long, was you still campaigning? Was it like the fight ain't over till IPP is eradicated?
Yeah, I still carried on with the campaigning. I had to, because at the end of the day, it's all about getting this sentence abolished retrospectively. Yeah. And it's not going to get abolished retrospectively if campaigners walk away from it. And along the years, some campaigners have walked away from it once their loved ones have come out. I don't blame them. Get on with your lives.
Yeah.
But for me, I thought, no, this is hanging over my son now till the day he dies. And you have to, I just kept at it. And especially when I knew it wasn't until he came out that I realised they took his soul away from him. They destroyed him.
There was, I think it's correct me if I'm wrong, 9,000 on IPP for low-level crimes.
There's just under 9,000 were sentenced to it. They were only thinking that 600 would get this IPP, the more serious offences. So all the other thousands, 8,000, because they nearly 9,000 in it. 8,000 have committed the lower level crimes that would not merit a life sentence, would not merit 10 years or more, most of them. And so many of them are really minor crimes. I mean, years ago, if someone done, say, an armed robbery at the bank, they get 15 years for that, And so some of these IPPs have done armed robberies, but with imitation firearm or waving a stick or what have you. And they got, like, say, 5 years, 6 years IPP. And they're still in all these years later. They're supposed to be rehabilitated, mend their ways, and most of them have, but they're still not getting out because they're seen by the Ministry of Justice as dangerous. And it's
crazy.
So you got those like Shaun that did a street robbery of a mobile phone, those street robbery of a bike. Others might have got into a fight outside a nightclub and they're locked up for that. There's all different crimes, all different crimes, but there's nobody deserves to be on the life sentence through the back door. I now call it, because we're going into up to 20 years now, we're in 17th year. I call it detention for life. And detention for life was for like the Moors murderers. What's his name? The one that killed those two little schoolgirls, Ian Huntley.
Wrong ends,
the wrong ends. That's what that sentence meant for. These IPP prisoners are now on detention for life. A lot of them. Some of them may never get out.
With some of the people Shaun was in prison with, other IPPs, did he meet like a network of them in there?
Yeah, they became friends because he was only just turned 18 when he got the IPP sentence. He spent his first 3 months in Park Prison and then they moved him to Aylesbury. So there's quite a few IPPs in Aylesbury Youth Offending Institute. So he met quite a few in there and they bond, they bond. None of them realise they're on this life sentence because they're still young by that time. Yeah. They're trying to contemplate what's an IPP. And, 2 years down the line, they're all learning that they're on this sentence because even though they're being told, they're not listening because it's not registering them with them. Because, boys under the age of 21 are very immature. You know, they don't grow up as fast as girls do in the head. So they still thought that they were going to get out on their 2 years, their 1 year or 3 years, whatever it was. And some of these friends that he made in Aylesbury, he went on to meet them in different prisons because they're all being sent around the country, different prisons. And, you know, some of them, he done most of his sentence with some of them, and 3 or 4 of them along the way have committed suicide, you know. And Shaun's, you know, like the one day, where's my mate in the next cell? He goes by there and he's dead, you know, he hung himself from the bunk. And so they got that grieving process that they're not allowed to go through because they have to carry on life as normal in the prison.
So would you say, so when you say, oh, they can't report it because of like, is that because it's a risk of them saying, hang on a minute, this person ain't stable, we can't release him? Is that the justification behind it?
What happens is a lot of them that have gone to, you know, through the mental health services within the prison with their depression and that, they don't go through the mental health services because there's no treatment for them, first of all. Their mental health gets mistaken for bad behaviour, so they're adjudicated. They got parole coming up, they don't get out. And then when they do realise that it is mental health, then they still don't get their next parole because they have to go through all this procedure of getting a mental health assessment and then the psychologist will say, you're not ready for release. We need to do more work with you. And, you know, everybody gets depressed now and again. I get depressed. I'm not getting locked up because I'm depressed.
Yeah.
You know, just get over it, I do. But them suffering depression in prison means more time.
Not just that. When they're out, they're asking for help and they're getting recalled.
Yeah, exactly. They're in a revolving door.
That's a form of abuse. You know, like when you're in a relationship and you can't speak up because you're scared of, you know, like you find that in relationships and how they can't speak. We were talking about that on a podcast with David Cottrell about sports stars. Football players can't open up about their mental health because they'll get sold on. They'll get moved to a club where they won't play. So they can't open up if they've got addictions and that. And that's the same kind of thing, you know. It's abuse and torture.
It is psychological torture, and that's what they're suffering now, psychological torture, even on the outside. You know, you've got some that have never got out. And like I said, when these prisoners first got an IPP sentence, they weren't traumatised by it because they didn't realise. But when they get out and then, you know, they're recalled back to this indefinite sentence, they're traumatised by it. The whole family is traumatised.
There has been 9 justice ministers since IPP. And you told me over the phone, you said none of them have had the balls to resentence that. Have any of them come close?
I don't think they have. I think they like to look like they're coming close. I don't know, Robert Buckland, I thought was a bit compassionate. He met me in another campaign at Donna Mooney twice, and he offered us a third meeting. And then 3 days before the third meeting, he was gone out of the job. Oh. So whether they really want to help, and when they're seen to want to help and do something, they're moved out, and they're sort of ghosted out, like prisoners are ghosted from one prison to another. That's what they do with these justice ministers. They ghost them out. And prison ministers, they've ghosted them out.
Well, especially if they're probably looking to
make some sort of
change and they don't want that change at the top, then they will. But if you put a photo up as well of a list of the last 9, it's politicians anyway. I look, you know, they all look dodgy, but have a look at them all. They just look so out of touch, and that's not judging what they look like.
I mean, we're the underclass to them. Do you know what I
they
mean?
look all higher class, upper class. I haven't got a clue.
You know, and they don't care about us. They don't care about these prisoners. This really suffering psychological torture in prison. They sleep at night. How they sleep at night, I'll never know. Because I mean, they're saying, like, to resentence all these IPP prisoners would cause, like, thousands of prisoners to walk out the gates of the prisons. No, it won't happen like that. Because some of them may get a life sentence.
Some of them are actually
and if they get that life sentence, then they will be on a life licence, okay? If they let a paedophile out, I've got no time for paedophiles, but if they let a paedophile out, because there are some in there, that paedophile will then be on the sex register. as a rapist would. They'd be on. They don't just free these people out there and not monitoring.
Let's abolish IPP and release them all. That's not what they're saying. It's not what you're saying.
There's sex offenders in there. There's people like that in there. They would get life, or they'd be on a life license. But you're talking thousands of IPPs here. There's 8,500 IPPs. So if they were to resentence the likes of Shaun and all those thousands that committed the far less serious offence, and they're on no licence, then the probation that are understaffed, some are thick, they don't even know what an IPP sentence is when they take over an IPP person. The family's got to phone them up and say, did you know this, did you know that? And they don't.
Wow.
And they would be able to monitor the more dangerous people and make sure they're not a danger to the public.
Well, you can, you siphon through the shit, don't you?
Yeah.
What do you know about Wales' #1 rated security provider, Boss Security? Boss Security Limited are a professional security service provider based in South Wales but servicing clients on a national scale. With over 10 years of experience in the security industry, they are true experts in all aspects of security. From CCTV monitoring, manned guards, mobile patrols and alarm response, they provide the most advanced technology on the market, along with an expert team of staff delivering complete security solution to their clients throughout the UK. So why don't you stay secure?
We've all heard of that saying, it's too good to be true. And I live by it until I come across tidy comps. Because there are good people out there who genuinely want to help make a difference in people's lives. And that's what TC are doing, via huge raffle prizes with all earnings going to a good cause. If you fancy a chance at winning, big or small, then send in your £1 entries to Tidy Comps. There are many opportunities to win, from daily and weekly Pay My Bills comps, signed shirts, and the big one that runs monthly, with prizes including 80 grand cash or a fully furnished house. What are you waiting for? Get a chance at winning big, and if you don't, then at least you're taking part in helping local charities throughout Wales, such as the Welsh Children's Cancer Charity, Jacob Abraham Foundation, Tackle Your Thoughts, and many more. Get over to Tidy Comps Facebook and other social media platforms to see what prizes are available today.
It's like probation officers now. They brought this new rule out in just last year, or when my head's gone with it all. But they brought a new rule out that IPP prisoners can always ask to have the licence taken off them at the 10-year point from the first initial release. We all know that, but some prisoners didn't. So what the government decided to do was, the Secretary of State for Justice, Dominic Raab, he's the one who brought this rule out, he will notify parole boards when an IPP prisoner reaches the 10-year point, right? There's IPP prisoners out here now waiting for him to contact the parole board. He haven't done it. So, they're talking about bringing this new action plan out where they're going to deal with these IPP prisoners, make sure there's psychologists there and there's new units going to be opened up for those with mental health issues to push them through. I'm thinking, hang on, you only brought this new rule out last year. Yeah. You can't even abide by that. And write off to the parole boards for these individual prisoners that are entitled to have their licence taken off them. And my concern there is, say Joe Bloggs there, he's into 10.5 years now since he got out. He should have been notified that he can apply at the 10-year point. There's nothing from the Justice Secretary to the parole board to direct that sort of, goal. So what if he got in a little bit of bother in the months after that 10-year?
Oh, don't. It's sad.
You got to go back to prison. You've done something, or you got a false allegation against you, and yet that license should have been took off him at the 10-year point. Yeah. If he was allowed.
Also, they've abolished this now. Yeah, so the people who are given it retrospectively, in the grand scheme of things, that's a couple of thousand people in a population of millions. they've probably literally, I know it sounds bad to say, they probably just look at them like they're just a writ off void, forget about them. That's what they are. They're having it. Some of these IP prisoners have probably died, since this. You know, a lot of them have suicided. Some of them are just dying from ill health in prison. We'll just wait until give it a couple of years. They'll all be gone, and we'll forget about IPP.
Yeah. And yet the reoffending rates with IPP prisoners is less than 1%.
This is what winds me up. Shaun, for a street robbery of a phone, the first one he wasn't even involved in, and then you've got, he's picked up a drug addiction whilst in prison on this thing because he's getting knocked back left, right, and centre. And then he comes out asking for help and he's being recalled for it.
Yeah.
What?
Exactly what's happened this time as well. He lapsed with his drugs again. He lapsed with his drugs. And I'm like, Shaun, come on, let's go round the clinic. By now he's with the CAU unit round the Cardiff Road Infirmary.
That's like the next step, they say, don't they?
So we took him round there and he was on 90 mils of meth by now. And they come to the conclusion that the 90 mils of meth wasn't holding him. So they'll up him to 110 mils. And then they'll have him back in within 2 or 3 weeks, and they were going to drastically bring him down.
Yeah.
And their aim was to put him on a Buvidal injection.
I was about to say we need to get him on an injection.
Yeah. And so we spoke about that, and then that was, say, on a Thursday. On the Monday, he'd gone in to see the probation officer who wanted to speak to him about how he went at the drug clinic.
Yeah.
So he tells her exactly what the plan is, blah, blah, blah. And while she's talking to him, and I am going to say it, she's talking to him, it's all recorded. Yeah, it's all recorded. On the phone. All recorded on the phone, right? I haven't put it out there, but it's recorded on the phone. She was talking to him and she's like asking him about how he went at the clinic, blah, blah, blah. And then in the next breath, she's like, Shaun, I used to like doing drugs. I used to love it. I used to love the smell and the taste. It was lovely. Fuck him, she says. I didn't give a shit. Now, you've just come from a drug clinic with me on a Thursday to try and sort his drug habits out. He's lapsing. He goes in to speak to the probation officer who's speaking to him like that. I used to sniff, Shaun. I used to do drugs. You don't talk to somebody that's trying to get help like that, And then the following week, he was recalled to prison.
By the same officer?
By the same officer.
About drugs again?
Yeah, yeah.
It's surely the pattern there. They either see where they're going wrong or...
Well, Shaun was telling me, and I am going to say it on you, he didn't like this new probation officer that he had. He said, Ma'am, I'm sure she's on drugs. He said, because, do you know when people are on cocaine, ma'am, they don't stop talking. They talk above you, they're in your face, they're yak, yak. That's what she's like, and he had concerns about it. And, and he used to say to me, Mum, I don't like her, I need to change her. I'm like, Shaun, you're paranoid. You're paranoid, Shaun. But what I did to him the one day, I thought, no, he might be telling the truth here by the way she's speaking to him. So I got my phone, I put it on record, and I put it in his pocket. He didn't know he was in there. He went into probation, he came home, and then I got the phone off him. And it's all recorded. That meeting where she's talking about that, sniffing drugs and everything, and how she enjoyed it. I got it all there on tape. And then she phones him before he's recalled, saying, I got it there again. Shaun, you're really good for probation. You turns up on time. You're really good with probation. That was the conversation. I got that. That was again 2 weeks before he was recalled. And why is he recalled for for being late for the appointment? Sorry. He's recalled for being late for the appointments. And yet she's in 2 weeks before, she's saying he's really good on time and turns up. So
bullshit.
My next campaign will be to get her out of the system. She got to go. She can't be managing.
She young, older?
She's young. She's young.
So, again, back to justice ministers. I know Chris Grayling when a bit. I remember when I was in prison, everyone hated him when he was in power.
Yeah.
But You had Liz Truss running it. Like, we know what she was like running the country.
Yeah.
So, you know, it must have been hopeless having her.
Yeah.
You just know you're not going to get anything from these people, don't you? You know?
No,
It's
you're not.
sad. Back to Dominic Raab as well. There's been like a lot of complaints of bullying
Yeah.
I've seen in the media of late.
Yeah.
You know, that's not good again, is it?
24 cases, allegations of bullying, you know, and they're not all liars, are they? 24 people are not lying. I mean, the man should step down and let someone else do the job properly. You know, you cannot go into work with people that's threatening to kill herself. Like the one woman, she wants to commit suicide. You know, she tried to go into work and they're just being bullied and, you know, throwing tomatoes at them. And if an IPP prisoner threw a tomato at another prisoner, he wouldn't get out on his parole.
Is that what he's doing?
He threw tomatoes, yeah. It's one of the people he works with.
You've seen
know?
his face. He looks horrible.
That was all over the newspapers. He's a horrible man. He's you know, and he describes IPP prisoners as stock. You know, describes them as stock. No, they're not stock. They're human beings.
That's your son.
Yeah. He's very offensive. Very offensive.
Mackenzie friends.
Yeah, I'm in contact with quite a lot of prisoners. They calls me up and, you know, talking about their paroles coming up and what have you, I'll mentor them and stuff like that. Because you know what, these rich people running this government, like there was one guy, his name was Royston Cox, he had a 3-month tariff, 4-month tariff, and he'd done 17 years inside. So I mentored him through his parole, and he was describing to me how he'd grown his beard down to his stomach, and I went, oh, do you know what, Royston? I said, cut it down, your beard. I said, because you know what these people are like. I said, they're upper class, we're the underclass. You don't want to be going, sitting in front of them looking like a terrorist, because that's how they'll picture you. Because when you meet someone, you always size people up,
of course,
you know, and you draw a conclusion of what type of person that is. I said, Royston, shave it or cut it down. You want to go in there. I said, you sit with your back to the chair, look them in the eye, and you answer their questions when they ask you while they're talking. You don't butt in, you don't touch, you don't do nothing, you know, because you're sat in front of a parole board. Your life is on the line, you know. And he did. He shaved all his. Well, he never shaved. He cut his beard right down, and we had to joke and laugh about it on the phone. I said, yeah, but you want to get out, so yeah, you've done the right thing. So there's loads of prisoners that I'm in touch with. You know, there's one now. He actually emailed me a suicide letter 2 weeks ago. He is going to kill himself on the 21st, I think. I'm sure it's the 21st or the 25th of April. He's recalled for the 5th time. One of his recalls, he got a malicious ex. They don't get on. Separated. She made a phone call to say he'd burgled the house. And so they recalled him back to prison. Yeah. And in the meantime, he was on a GPS tag, yeah? The GPS tag proved that he was 20 miles away from that property. Yet they wouldn't let him out of prison until he had a parole hearing. And he'd done 2 years in prison for that. And, you know, all of his recalls have been ridiculous. Yeah. And he said he'd had enough now. He's in his 50s, I think about 50, maybe just under. But he's had a guts full of being recalled, and each recall have been unfair. It's been proven that it's wrong, you know, every time, been proven wrong. He said, I can't live a life of in and out of prison no more, Shirley. I can't take it. And he's at, you know, even when he phones me, you know, he's crying down the phone, which sort of traumatises me because I don't know what to do. You know, I feels like, you know, I say, no, don't do this, don't do that. We're doing this on the outside. But everything we're doing on the outside, even with the Justice Select Committee launching its inquiry and you know, the governments have reacted now and rejected most of what they've asked for, like resentencing, bring the 10-year licence down to 5, all rejected. And a stupid action plan he wants to put in place that is not going to work, end of. And he's looking at that and he's saying, I know you are all working hard, Shirley, he said, but we're not getting nowhere. We're still in and out of prison like yo-yos. Can't do it.
You said he said the date of the 25th of April. So
21st or
he's
it's his birthday.
he's warning a date already to you, is he?
Yeah, it's his birthday on that date, and he's
Okay.
got an older daughter that he's very close to, and he's decided he's going to do it on that date, so his daughter won't have two memoriams. It'll just be his birthday and the date that he dies on his birthday.
Have you tried to intervene in a way? Obviously, you're talking to him, but can you like report to the prisons, or do you think they won't do nothing?
The prison knows, they're aware of what's going on.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
so they're like watching him. They're aware. But if someone's determined to kill herself, you're not going to stop it,
No.
are you? You know.
What's the out of all the IPP prisoners you've come in contact with, what is probably the most like lowest and uncalled for? You would say the shocking. I think Shaun's is probably up there as well with.
Oh, there's loads. You got like a young lad called Wayne Bell, robbery of a bike or a coat or something like that. He was only 17 and he's still inside today. Well, he's in a mental hospital now. He's been in there for the last 2 or so years. And they own him, the state own him, where it got to a point where his mum wasn't even allowed to see him. And there was one point where she went to see him, but only through a window, and it broke her because he looked like something out of Belsen, you know, a concentration camp. His clothes he had a little grey tracksuit on. It was like 10 sizes too big for him. And he was like a matchstick stood inside of it. And he was crying at the wind, tear ran down his cheek, and he was like waving to her, you know. And like, that is sad. That is sad. How can the Ministry of Justice, anyone in there, sleep at night knowing this is what they're doing to people's children? Because that's what he was, a kid, when he got sentenced in the eyes of the law. But there are sad cases. I mean, there's another one of Garth O'Hagan. He was 17 years of age. He was living in a shared accommodation. Somebody had stolen all his belongings. Not that he had much, but everything
It happens.
he had. And his mental health, he wasn't in a good place. And he lit fire to his room. There was no one else in the property when he did that. It was a cry for help. They sentenced him to 17 months IPP, and he didn't get out for 11 years. Then he got recalled because the hostel he was in, the contract had ran out, and they didn't have nowhere else to put him, and he's not allowed to be homeless. So he was going back to prison for that. Whilst in prison, I got the documents at home to prove it, Ministry of Justice documents, Parole Board documents, where whilst he was inside, offences were happening on the outside, on a domestic abuse, stealing his keys to his girlfriend's car and taking the car, all sorts of crimes. And they were all put on him. He went in front of his parole because his parole had come up, and I was the first to hear of it when he started reading it in the parole board. So he didn't get his parole. He had to stay in prison. Obviously, he's denying it because it wasn't him. The police had to come to his next parole hearing and say, that's not the boy. He was in prison on a recall when all these crimes took place. So they denied him his parole, and he had to stay in longer until he was sorted out with the police. So there's fake stuff going on in their files as well. I got quite a few dossiers from people who've all fake and stuff on their files, but there's nothing they can do about it at the moment because it's not a cluster in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's one question I want to ask you. Well, it's kind of trying to look at it from their perspective. It's more about the recall situation as well, you know. Like, I'm just thinking from maybe a justice minister or the government who make this law, who are not really streetwise, street savvy. They haven't got a clue of what life is really like. But do you think that they just recall him because they think, well, listen, we've given this IPP sentence. They know the consequences if they reoffend. So it's their own fault if they're going back in, lock them up forever. Do you think that's probably what they think, their mentality?
At the end of the day, there's people this inside now on charges that were dropped, charges no further actions, and charges found not guilty in court. They're still in prison, and some of them up to 4 years. Yeah, it's proven they are innocent. That happened to Garth. Yeah, he got arrested, and CCTV camera showed it was nothing to do with him, and that's what happened to him. He got recalled for that. So that's going on, but a lot of these prisoners are not recalled for committing a crime. They're recalled for non-compliance.
Yeah.
It's non-compliance, late appointments, didn't turn up back at their hostel on time, or they left their hostel before 7 o'clock in the morning, say 5 minutes early. You're not to leave till 7 p.m. They leave at 6:55. And you're recalled for stuff like that. Some people are recalled from hostels, approved premises. Maybe they've had an argument with another inmate. And if the people running our hostel, that approved premises, think, we can't cope with this, if they're arguing, rather than sort it out and separate them and move one on to a different premises, one of them will go back to prison. The IPP will go back to prison. Yeah. So it's you could have someone phone up and say he's playing loud music next door.
Yeah.
It's annoying me. It's like antisocial behaviour, isn't it? Go back in prison for it.
Is it like a bad dream for you?
It's never ending. It's never ending nightmare, if that's what you want to call it.
Where is Shaun now? Has he got when's his next parole date?
We haven't got a date. He had a paper hearing in December, and the parole board had no paperwork from probation as to how his behaviour had been, his progression in prison. So they denied release on that ground. So he's got to have an oral hearing. The window's open up until September, as far as I'm aware. But how are they going to monitor his behaviour when they're locked up 23 hours a day?
Well, this is what I was going to say. Since lockdown and everything, this is what they're doing now. They're locking down prisoners 23 hours of the day
they're still
anyway.
Into COVID rules.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, but you've got to, as a government, you've got to find a way that this is solved, because what you're doing now is you're just saying, we'll cut it off for a couple of years, and if we go back to the old system, prisoners,
it don't hit the headline news. It don't go on the news about prisoners still under COVID rules.
It's a joke.
It don't go on the news, and then because they're prisoners,
because they think
they're classed as nasty, horrible people. Lock them away and throw away the key.
It's not the case, is it? And not just that, prison is meant to be there to rehabilitate.
Yeah.
Back into a community, not just lock away and throw away the key.
There's absolutely no rehabilitation because the government are not spending on the resources for prisons. They keep going on about public safety. Keep the public safe. You want to keep the public safe, Mr. Raab? Spend some money on the prisons and start rehabilitating these prisoners, because you've got prisoners in there on determinate sentences that committed terrible crimes. They're not being rehabilitated. They're going to come out. They're going to commit crimes again, maybe the most horriblest crimes. And then that messes it up for us IPP campaigners then, because as soon as someone comes out of prison, commits a terrible crime, it's all over the news.
Well, let's admit it.
It's all over the news. Not over the news about they haven't been rehabilitated.
No.
It's just the crime is on the news.
And let's face it, most offences are re-offences. Yeah. The people who've been in the system for so long.
But there's no rehabilitation at all. And I just don't know how the taxpayer is paid. The taxpayer is paying for this. Where's the money going if they're not spending it in the prisons on rehabilitation courses, on resources, on mental health? Where is the taxpayer's money going to? There should be an outcry, where people are living in poverty. We're going through these times at the moment. People can't afford to pay their own bills. They can't afford to eat. Those that's working, ask, where's your money going, please?
People don't give a fuck unless it's on their own doorstep.
Yeah.
If it's their own son.
That's
if it's their
right.
own sister.
They don't.
That's the reality.
They don't.
Dominic Raab, again, you said he got this new rule where, because I always thought with IPP, the Queen had to have signed it off for release. I thought that was, is that a myth?
No, that's like Her Majesty's pleasure, wasn't it, years ago? If you were a 16-year-old and you committed a terrible crime, you would get
Is that what Dominic's done now, though? Is like if the parole board's there?
No, but what he's done, he's taken away what's the word I'm looking for? The parole board is independent of the Ministry of Justice, yeah?
Okay.
They've always done a brilliant job. But Dominic Raab wants to get in there, yeah? So says when lifers or IPP prisoners go for parole and a parole directs release, then it has to go to Dominic Raab to stamp.
For the final say-so.
And at the moment, he has stamped a few to say, no, you're staying in prison.
So he's overturned the decision from
He's
the parole board.
overturning decisions from the parole board. You know, it's like as if he wants to make a name for himself.
Yeah.
He wants to go down in the history books as the minister that changed this, changed that. No, he's the minister that's fucking everything up. He is. Yeah.
Well, you know, I got turned down quite a few times for tag and early release and stuff, but normally it's literally like, you know, if probation say normally, you know, a probation want you out to work in the community, they'll normally accept you. It's down to the governor, obviously, his final sign. And if he signs it off, he's either got it in for you or he's just a fucking prick, because normally they go with what probation say.
Well, it would be
or
the governor's years ago, wouldn't it? They would sign release,
so that's what Dominic's doing in his own way, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, have you ever spoken to him?
I've never spoken to him.
What would you say to him?
I don't think I could ever face that man, to be honest with you. If he said, come and meet me tomorrow, I don't think I'd go. Because I would be so angry. Because no matter what you say to him, he ain't going to listen. He's not going to listen. And, you know, and if I went to see him, I'd feel like I was being bullied by him, maybe. Because he's going to come out with a load of crap. And because I know what type of man he is, I don't like him. He's going to be, you know, I hate him, to be honest.
He's indirecting.
And I would not
already
want to listen to the crap that he'd want to tell me. So no, that man is a no.
You look at Matt Hancock, you know, health minister, fucked the show up with COVID, goes on fucking celebrity, everyone loves him. Let's vote Matt Hancock. You know, Dominic Raab is the same thing.
He's another one writes in a book, you make thousands or millions, you know, depending on.
But they've all caused misery against us at our expense.
Yeah,
it gets me wound up as well, you know. But
they're all in it for themselves.
What if you could change? If you could make fast change to adjust the IPP system, what would you do?
What I would do if they're not going to resentence them and they're going to keep this IPP sentence, changes I would make would be to bring the 10-year part of the licence down to 5 years. But after 2 years on release, they should, with good behaviour, then that licence should be suspended until the 5-year point where they could apply to have it taken off them. That's what I would massively change, because if you've got someone who's been out of prison for 2 years, kept their nose clean, suspend it, another 3 years then, apply to have it taken off them. Yeah, that's what I would change there. The other thing I would change is there's a lot of prisoners on IPP and lifers, you know, all prisoners. There's a lot of them have got autism, learning disabilities and stuff like that. Because the prison officers are coming in and out of the prison like yo-yos, they're not sticking to the job. You know, they come in and these IPP prisoners, they don't know their situation. So I think it's about time that IPP prisoners were put in some situation where they can teach prison officers their situation. So prison officers to have more understanding of the IPP sentence, so as they know about it. Yeah. And then when they're gone, when they leave the job, the next one comes in and the IPP prisoners can teach him. And, you know, and maybe then these prisoners won't be so hard to look after.
Yeah.
You know, that I would change that.
That's a good point.
I would change that for lifers as well. But
just on that one, but before you go on then, as well, I maybe you'd say no, I don't think so, but I even think maybe a designated wing or prison for him, because there's nothing worse than being on a sentence knowing everyone around you is going to be gone in a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months.
You got Berwyn prison now. They got so many IPP on our wing, 3 or 4 on our wing. Why don't they just put them all together where they can mentor each other?
Because they're seeing people coming in and out of the door.
Yeah, and this is what's happening. So they separate them all up, even in one prison. They're all on separate wings. Put them all together, and then they can all have one offending manager on our wing rather than spreading themselves around where you don't get to see your offending manager. Exactly, they can mentor each other. They can be listeners. You know, they can help each other. But, you know, if you're one of 3 or 4 IPP prisoners on a wing of, say, 70, 80 boys, men, what have you, because a lot of these in prison, with these IPP prisoners, they're describing them as 18, 19, 20-year-old dickheads.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they got
They're
a
gonna
2-year
easily
sentence, they're going to get out
get
in a
wrapped up
year,
with something, yeah.
you know, and stuff like that. They're doing drugs.
Yeah.
There's violence, there's blackmail, there's intimidation.
It's so true. It's like having a lifer wing. They should have an IPP wing.
And they need to take these away from these wings and put them on a wing of their own. I agree with you. I've always said it.
Yeah.
Always said it.
Anything else?
I want to bring up the TARES scheme. The TARES scheme is foreign nationals that's been sentenced to prison, and when they serve their time, they can be deported back to their country of origin.
Yeah.
Okay? There's IPP prisoners, the foreign nationals have got sentenced to the IPP sentence, and I've looked into this. It's well known now and accepted by the government, by campaign groups, Prison Reform Trust, everyone have looked into it. IPP prisoners are now suffering terrible psychological torture because of the sentence. That goes for foreign nationals as well, yeah? So they won't let these IPP prisoners out of prison because they got psychological mental health issues going on, psychosis, schizophrenic, all these stuff going on. Yet they will take an IPP prisoner, a foreign national, and deport him back to his country with all these illnesses, no IPP sentence over there, no care, no matter about what's going on in that person's head, to fend for himself, yeah? Now, if they can send these group of IPP prisoners back home to their country of origin, whether they want to go or not, yeah?
Yeah.
Why are they keeping our prisoners in? Why are they keeping the British ones in? And I'm not being racist. I'm trying to be fair here. Fair to the foreign nationals that's been sent back to the countries. And some of them have been born here. They've been here, like, there's one guy, he's been here since the age of 4 from Somalia, born on Somalia.
Yeah.
His nan, his gramps, aunts, uncles, cousins, all killed. His mother and father brought him and his sisters and brothers over here. He got IPP in 2005. And the other year, they were trying to deport him back to Somalia. Yeah? He don't know Somalia. Yeah? He don't know Somalia. His family's here. His friends are here. He got 2 children with Bernadette, like. And they wanted to deport him. But that was called off in the end, because we did put a little bit of a fight up for it. But how many have been born and bred here and sent to countries they don't know? We know it's happening because it's happened with the Windrush generation. You know? So there's where's the fairness in saying we can't release this IPP prisoner because he got psychosis and schizophrenia?
Yeah.
Oh, but we can send this one back to Somalia or this one back to Spain or Portugal. Yeah? So it's not fair.
Okay. As well, on the change as well, because you said this to me, I might as well say it just in case you forgot. About the parole hearings that every 2 years, you think they should be every year as well, didn't you?
Yeah, definitely. I think a parole hearing, if you've had a knockback, it must be within a year. If you're recalled, right, and like I said, anything, false allegations, charges, drops, whatever, I think you should be released within a 6-week period of that.
Okay.
Yeah, because they can find you somewhere to live, family take you in, a hostel, wherever they need to put you. And I also believe that... you know, like, what was the other thing to do with the parole? It's like, every year, and the recalls. If you're recalled and for lapsing in drugs, they can sort you out in 6 months. You can come home in 6 months.
No, you shouldn't even be getting recalled for lapsing in drugs.
I know you shouldn't. I know you should. It's not a criminal offence.
It's a fucking joke.
They're criminalising it. Yeah, in that sense.
Now, there are DRR orders out there as well, not just for people who get caught, committing crimes and they go to court and it's all drug related. They have DRR orders, and I think like you have a couple of strikes and you're going back to but not for taking the drug. That's for reoffending. If you use drugs, what they do is you go to court every month for a review, and on there'll be all your drug tests. Yeah, I've done about 10 DRRs, and every time I go to court, and on my review, I was always given negative tests, but I never got recalled for it. They're just like, right, next month we'll try and do, and I bet you 99.9% of those courts and those people, right, who'd have Shaun there, they probably feel, they feel for him as well.
Yeah.
It's just whoever's above, who's made this IPP thing is just fucked up, because I think everyone knows that that's wrong.
I think the probation are allowing to themselves, though, because they're the ones with the power.
It's down to their discretion, isn't it?
Yeah, and they got no time for IPP prisoners. They really haven't got no time for them. They're just recalled.
It's a ball ache to them.
There was one time in Cardiff probation where every single IPP prisoner had been recalled. I'm not sure if that was the year 2019. I'm not sure. But every single IPP prisoner had been recalled under their watch. So, and they don't know the distinctive between somebody being an imminent risk to the public. You're only supposed to be recalled if you're an imminent risk to the public of serious harm. Yeah?
Before we go as well, I just want to go and some of these stats I got here. You've got a website, the IPP Committee in Action. So people, if any of you want to go and check that out, show your support, would be much appreciated. I've got some numbers here. So 2,946 prisoners who are serving IPP are now in right now. This was from March or April, but I'm pretty sure that's pretty accurate, because like you said, it takes 2 years for them to get out anyway.
Yeah.
So that number's probably more.
Yeah.
1,498 serving IPP have served their original sentence already. And again, I want to just say this to put this into perspective for people. Like IPP was abolished in 2012, but not retrospectively. Do people understand what that means? That means if you was given the sentence, you still got it. So what that's like saying is, you caught cancer in 2010, but in 2012 they found a cure to cancer. But I'm sorry, we can't give you that cure because you caught cancer in 2010. You missed that boat by 2 years. That's exactly what it's like saying.
Yeah.
That is what it is, black and white. You're going to have to sit there and die, because I'm sorry, you caught cancer in 2010 and we've only got it now. That's what it's like saying.
Yeah. It's true.
It's
true.
It's fucking baffling to me, and it's disgusting.
Yeah. And that's how IPP prisoners feel. They feel like it's an infection. They're infected with it, It's like a disease. It's not going away. And that's even for the families, because the families are traumatised by this as well.
Yeah.
There's one family now, their son have just had a knockback after 2.5 years, waiting for his parole, and he can't come out. He's done everything asked of him. It's like he said, what more can I give? I give everything. What more do they want? And when you start feeling like that you've given them everything, what more do they want?
That's when you're going to...
That's when there's a line between sanity and insanity. And I should imagine that guy is in a terrible state in prison right now, being knocked back,
It's I've done, like I said, I've done 10 sentences, all for petty shit. But I still get nightmares now where I think I'm in jail. I wake up and I'm in, I think I'm in jail. Horrible nightmares. Can't imagine what it's like for Shaun and for those other IPP prisoners.
He got a habit of looking over his shoulder a lot. He always have since he came out. I think that's part of being in prison, looking over your shoulder. Because when he was in prison, he did try and make the right friends and stay away from trouble. He'd never been in any violence in prison all the years he was in there. Even now, no violence. When they recalled him in 2017 to an approved premises, he was only there for 11 o'clock at night. I got a phone call to come and bring him back home again because he was attacked there. And he didn't retaliate because his thinking skills, he mustn't. If he would have retaliated, they would have stuck him in prison. you know. But he was home the same day, so that was like an unfair recall.
Yeah.
The stress and trauma we went through that day with the phone call, you got 2 hours, Shaun, to get to Cardiff Central Station and get to Swansea in the approved premises. He's like, what have I done? What have I done?
I'm surprised they didn't recall him for fucking just getting beat up. Like, you can't even fart wrong, can you? It's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, exactly. But there you go. But, you know, we're just going to keep campaigning, plodding along. There is another website out there for people. There's IPP committeeinaction.com, ours. But there is another website, and it's got absolutely everything up to date on that one.
What's that?
And that is ungrip.com.
Ungripped?
Yeah, with a double P.
Okay, I'll put that on.
Ungrip with a double P.
I'll put that on the...
Because everything is on there. Also, you know, just... people like out there who's listening, please put yourself in our shoes, in the shoes of people that's, you know, been in prison for 17 years for nicking a phone or a bike or gone to a little fight, watching other people coming in, committing the same crime, or even worse, some people even murdering people and getting out in less than 17 years.
Well, that's the fucked up thing.
Yeah.
There is genuinely people who I know, and we all know of people who have done a serious crime and they're back on our roads.
Yeah.
You know? But someone who's nicked a fucking phone ain't.
Yeah.
It's not right.
Like the government keep going on about public protection. But at the end of the day, you know, it's less than 1% the reoffending rate of IPP prisoners when they are released, you know? So it's mad. It's crazy.
Shirley, I'm done. Shirley, you, I take my hat off to you.
Well, thanks for having me here anyway and try and get it out there.
Yeah, listen, like, I've always been, you know, against IPPs, and, you know, we should have had you on before, but I think timing's right now anyway. He's in there right now. Like, I think it's, you know, there's conversations happening in other departments, especially with drug services as well and addiction. So, you know, this needs to be gone. It needs to be gone. Do you know what I mean? Because, you know, you want peace in your life, you know. This is not what you want to fucking do for the rest of your life. Do you know what I mean?
No,
and we don't want this for Shaun.
No, exactly. I will never give up. If there's anyone wants any help, got no one to turn to, just Google IPP committeeinaction.com, like the Ungrip campaign as well. You can Google that. There is help out there. There are individuals that will talk to you. There's, you know, just reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. And even your loved ones in the prison now, you can even give the message to them. You know, there's always stories of the campaigns going on in the Inside Times newspaper. So make sure you pick up the Inside Times every month and read it. The the government are coming out on the 31st of March this month with their refreshed action plan. But whatever happens, we're out here and we're fighting for you all, okay? Just remember that.
The Central Club.